Welcome back to Valentra Tales, wishing you a truly good day, filled with calm moments and gentle things ahead. And now, let's step together into today's story.
I buried my daughter 31 years ago and never stopped grieving. Last Tuesday my phone rang at 2 a.m. Miss Harrison. This is Mercy General. Amanda Clark is here. She finally remembers who she is. My blood ran cold. Because I stood at Amanda's grave in 1993. Mrs. Harrison, your daughter wants to see you. 7 words. That's all it took to destroy 31 years of carefully constructed grief. It was 2:03 a.m. I'd been asleep beside my husband Caleb in our quiet house in Eugene, Oregon. The house where we'd learned to live with a ghost. The house where every room still carried the absence of the daughter we'd buried in 1995. Before we continue, thank you for being here. If you believe survivors deserve to have their voices heard, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps these stories reach others who need hope. Now let's see what happened next. My daughter is dead, I said into the phone, my voice automatic. Flat. I'd said it so many times it had become a reflex. Ma'am, I'm Dr. Rachel Winters from Mercy General Hospital in Portland. The woman in our care is Amanda Clark. She's 49 years old. She's been experiencing recovered memories for the past 72 hours. She remembers a house with a green front door. A mother who baked Dutch apple pie. A father who did terrible movie impressions. And she remembers a birthmark behind her right ear that her mother called her secret wings. I stopped breathing. The secret wings. Our secret. Mine and Amanda's alone. If she's alive, I whispered, then who did I bury? Dr. Winters was quiet for a moment. That's what we need to find out, Mrs. Harrison. But first, your daughter is asking for you. She finally knows who she is. The phone slipped from my hand. It hit the nightstand, clattered to the floor. Caleb was sitting up now, his face pale in the dim light from the alarm clock, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Brittany. His voice was careful. Afraid. Who was that? I couldn't answer. My mouth opened but no sound came out. My entire body had gone numb, like my brain had shut down everything except the most essential functions. Breathe in. Breathe out. Don't pass out. Caleb picked up the phone from the floor, pressed it to his ear. Hello. This is Caleb Harrison. Who is this? I watched him listen. Watched the color drain from his face. Watched his hands start to shake. We'll be there, he said finally, his voice hoarse. We're leaving now. He hung up. We sat there in the darkness, staring at each other. 38 years of marriage and I'd never seen him look like this. Lost. Terrified. Like the ground had just opened up beneath us. She said, Caleb's voice broke. She said Amanda's alive. I'm 60 years old now and for 31 of those years, I've been a mother with a ghost in her heart. Every November 8th, I visit the grave with the name Amanda Harrison carved into cold granite. Caleb still goes with me, though we've stopped talking much on those drives. What's left to say after 3 decades? Our son Jordan stopped coming years ago. He moved to Boston, built a life far from the town where his sister vanished. He calls on her birthday, voice tight and careful, like he's walking on glass. Like one wrong word will send me spiraling back into the person I became in 1993. We've learned to live around the wound the way you learn to walk with a limp. Our house in Eugene is quiet now, filled with routines we've perfected to avoid the empty spaces. I bake Dutch apple pie every Sunday, even though Amanda's not here to eat it. Caleb grades chemistry papers at the kitchen table, making the same terrible movie impressions that used to make her laugh. His Sean Connery is awful. His Clint Eastwood is worse. But he does them anyway and I smile anyway, and we pretend we're not performing these rituals for a daughter who's been dead for 31 years. We're functional. We're surviving. But we're not whole, and we stopped pretending we ever would be again. I need to get dressed, I heard myself say. My voice sounded far away, like it was coming from someone else's body. Portland is 3.5 hours. For if there's fog. Brittany. Caleb grabbed my hand. We've gotten calls like this before. He was right. 3 times over the years. 3 false alarms that had nearly destroyed us. In 1995, a woman called claiming she'd had psychic visions of Amanda in California. Caleb drove 18 hours based on nothing but desperation and found a girl who looked vaguely similar but wasn't our daughter. In 2001, a con artist called with details pulled from old news articles. asking for money to help Amanda come home. I almost wired $5,000 before our old detective talked me down. In 2008, an elderly woman with dementia kept calling, insisting every young person she saw was someone's missing child. Each time the hope had nearly killed us. Each time we'd had to rebuild ourselves from the disappointment. She knew about the secret wings, I said quietly. Nobody knows about that. Nobody. Caleb went very still. He knew what that meant. The secret wings were ours alone. A bedtime story I'd invented when Amanda was 4 years old and terrified she wasn't special enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't anything enough. I'd trace that tiny butterfly-shaped birthmark behind her right ear with my fingertip and whisper that she had secret wings. That butterflies were the bravest creatures because they transformed themselves completely. That she could fly anywhere in her dreams and I'd always be there to catch her if she fell. That detail had never been in police reports. Never mentioned to investigators. Never shared with reporters or grief counselors or anyone. How could a stranger know about that unless she was Amanda? I'm coming with you, Caleb said, already reaching for his jeans. No. I touched his face, felt the stubble on his jaw, the familiar shape of him. Not yet. I need to see first. If it's real. I couldn't finish the sentence. The hope felt too dangerous, too fragile to speak into existence. He understood. After everything we'd survived together, he always understood. Caleb and I are different people than we were in 1993. The first 5 years after Amanda disappeared, we barely spoke. We just passed each other like strangers in our own home, both drowning in grief so overwhelming it became its own presence. A third person living in our house, suffocating us. I blamed him for not driving her to the library that night. He blamed me for the argument we'd had 3 days before she vanished. About whether she should defer her Berkeley scholarship to do environmental activism work for a year. She called me controlling. I'd called her naive. We'd both said things we couldn't take back. And then she was gone and I never got to say I was sorry. We almost divorced in 1997. Sat in a mediator's office with papers half signed before we both looked at each other and realized we were the only 2 people in the world who understood this specific flavor of devastation. So we stayed. We rebuilt something smaller, quieter, more fragile than what we'd had before. Now we hold hands during movies and sleep on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to take up too much space. We've learned not to mention Amanda's name unless it's a specific occasion. Her birthday, the anniversary of her disappearance, Thanksgiving when the absence screams loudest. Our friends stopped inviting us to things years ago. We became the couple people pitted but didn't want around. Living reminders that terrible things happen to good people. That your children can vanish between one breath and the next. That safety is an illusion we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night. My son Jordan is a stranger I gave birth to. He was 15 when Amanda vanished and I wasn't there for him. Not really. I was too consumed with searching, with drowning, with becoming someone I didn't recognize. Caleb tried to be there for him but he was drowning too. Jordan raised himself through high school. Went to college at MIT on the opposite coast. Built a careful life that doesn't include much of us. He married a woman named Claire we met exactly twice before the wedding. They have 2 children, Emma 7 and Michael 5, that we see mostly in Christmas photos and occasional video calls. Jordan video calls once a month. Asks about our health. Talks about his job as a software engineer in careful surface-level ways. He never asks how I'm really doing because he knows I'll lie and say I'm fine. There's this wall between us built from guilt and resentment and grief none of us know how to dismantle. I know he blames me for disappearing into my grief when he needed me most. I know he thinks I loved Amanda more than I loved him. He's not entirely wrong. That knowledge sits in my chest like a stone I can't swallow and can't spit out. I got dressed in the dark, pulling on jeans and a sweater with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Caleb sat on the edge of the bed watching me, his face unreadable. What if it's her? He asked quietly. Then we've been mourning the wrong person for 31 years, I said. Then someone else's daughter is in that grave with Amanda's name on it. The thought made me sick. Some other mother out there might have spent 3 decades searching, hoping, praying for news that would never come because we'd identified the remains as ours. Because the medical examiner had said they were 85% certain. 85%. What about the other 15? What if it's not her? Caleb asked. What if this is another? Then we survive it, I said. Like we survived the others. But I didn't believe it. Not this time. Not with the secret wings. I grabbed my purse, my keys, checked my phone. 2:17 a.m. If I left now, I could be in Portland by 6. Maybe earlier if the roads were clear. Caleb walked me to the door. Pulled me into his arms and held me like he was afraid I might disappear too. Call me, he whispered against my hair. The second you know. I don't care what time it is. I will. I love you, Britt. I love you too. I got into my car. Started the engine. Backed out of our driveway in the dark. And as I drove toward Portland on empty highways, I realized that no matter what I found at Mercy General Hospital, nothing would ever be the same again. Either my daughter was alive and everything I'd built my life on for 3 decades was a lie, or she was dead, and this was just another cruel trick the universe was playing on a mother who'd already lost everything once. I didn't know which possibility terrified me more. The highway stretched ahead of me, dark and endless. I kept the radio off. I needed silence to prepare myself for whatever waited at the end of this journey. I needed silence to remember how to breathe. Because somewhere in Portland, in a psychiatric unit at Mercy General Hospital, a woman who called herself Amanda Clark was asking for me. A woman who knew about the secret wings. And I was about to find out if miracles were real. Or if hope was just another way to break. The highway was empty at 2:30 a.m. Just me and the broken white lines stretching endlessly ahead, swallowed by darkness the moment they passed under my headlights. I kept the radio off. Music felt obscene somehow, like celebrating at a funeral. The silence was suffocating, but I needed it. Needed the space to think. To remember. To prepare myself for whatever waited at the end of this 3.5-hour drive. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. November 8, 1993. That date lived in my bones. The last normal day before our lives split cleanly into before and after. Amanda had been 18. Brilliant. Full of fire and conviction and that particular brand of teenage certainty that you're invincible, that the world will bend to your will if you just push hard enough. She'd been accepted to Berkeley with a full scholarship. Environmental law. She was going to save the rainforests, stop climate change, make the world better through sheer force of will. But 3 days before she disappeared, we'd had a fight. A bad one. She'd wanted to defer her scholarship for a year. Said she needed to do real activism work first, get field experience, understand the problems she'd be fighting against. There was some group organizing protests against illegal logging operations and she wanted to join them. I'd been terrified. Terrified she'd throw away her future, her education, her scholarship. Terrified she'd get hurt or arrested or derailed from the path that would give her the tools to actually make a difference. I'd called her naive. Told her she didn't understand how the real world worked. She called me controlling. Said I didn't believe in her. We'd both said things we couldn't take back. Things that still echoed in my head 31 years later. The night she disappeared, she'd told us she was going to study at the library. A group project, she'd said. She'd be home by 10. We found out later, too late, that she'd lied. She'd gone to meet someone from an early internet bulletin board. Someone who claimed to be organizing an environmental protest. Someone who'd said all the right things to an 18-year-old girl desperate to change the world. The detective who worked her case tracked down a witness. A librarian who'd been locking up that night. She'd seen Amanda getting into a white van near the downtown library at 9:47 p.m. After that, nothing. Like she'd been erased from existence. I'd never gotten to apologize for that fight. Never gotten to tell her I believed in her after all. Never gotten to say I was sorry for not trusting her to make her own choices. That guilt had lived in my chest for 31 years, a weight I carried everywhere. A semi-truck roared past me going the opposite direction, close enough that my car shook in the displaced air. I flinched, jerked the wheel slightly, corrected course. Focus. I needed to focus. This wasn't the first call we'd gotten claiming Amanda was alive. The first one came in March 1995, barely 4 months after she'd disappeared. A woman named Crystal something calling from a payphone in Sacramento. She'd had psychic visions of Amanda working at a diner somewhere in California. Caleb had gotten in the car that same day. Drove 18 hours straight based on nothing but desperation and a stranger's claim. He'd found a diner. Found a girl who was roughly the right age with dark hair like Amanda's. But it wasn't her. Not even close, really, once he looked at her properly. Just a girl who vaguely fit the description and a psychic who'd been hoping for reward money. He'd called me from a motel room in Sacramento and I'd heard him break down completely. Sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe. I'd stayed on the phone with him for 2 hours, both of us crying, both of us trying to figure out how to survive the disappointment. The second call came in 2001. A man, this time smooth-voiced, sympathetic. He'd said he'd seen Amanda, that she was living in Seattle, but she was scared to come home. Scared we'd be angry with her for disappearing. He could help facilitate a reunion, he said, but it would require some money. Travel cost. A safe place for her to stay. Just $5,000. I'd almost wired it. Had the bank account numbers written down, my hand on the phone, ready to call and authorize the transfer. Our old detective Tom Patterson had talked me down. Explained gently that this was a common scam, that con artists targeted families of missing persons because we were vulnerable, desperate, willing to believe anything. He'd been right. The phone number disconnected the next day. The man was never found. The third call came in 2008. An elderly woman named Margaret who kept calling from a care facility in Portland. She had dementia, her nurses explained apologetically. She thought every young woman she saw was someone's missing child. She'd call families from cold case files, insist she'd seen their loved ones, become agitated when they didn't immediately come retrieve them. Each time the hope had nearly destroyed us. Each time Caleb and I had to rebuild ourselves from the shattered pieces of disappointment. That's why I'd left him at home this time. Why I couldn't let him come with me. If this was another false alarm, another psychic, another con artist, another confused elderly woman, I needed to absorb the blow alone. Needed to be the one who shattered so he could stay whole. But the secret wings. That detail changed everything. How could anyone know about that unless they were Amanda? My exit appeared in the distance. Woodburn. I was making good time. No fog, barely any traffic. I'd be in Portland by 6 at this rate. Maybe earlier. My stomach churned. I'd thrown up twice already, had to pull over on the shoulder and heave into the gravel while semis roared past. Because if Amanda was alive, then the remains we'd buried in December 1995 belonged to someone else. I could still remember that day with perfect clarity. The call from the detective. Hikers had found remains in the Cascade foothills. Female, approximately 18 to 20 years old. The forensic anthropologist estimated the body had been there at least a year, possibly 2. Dental records had been inconclusive. Too much decomposition. Too much damage from wildlife and weather. But there were other things. Fragments of a Berkeley sweatshirt. A silver bracelet that looked like one Amanda wore. A gift from her grandmother. Delicate chain with a small tree charm. A student ID card so weathered and damaged you could barely read it, but the partial name matched. The medical examiner had been careful. Professional. He'd said they were 85% certain the remains were Amanda's. 85%. Not 100. Not definitive. But close enough. We'd been so desperate for closure. So exhausted from 2 years of searching, of not knowing, of living in this horrible limbo where she might be dead or might be suffering somewhere and we couldn't help her. 85% had felt like enough. We'd held a funeral. I'd picked out a casket for remains that barely filled a small box. Stood at a grave with Amanda's name carved into granite and said goodbye. Promised her I'd tried everything. Promised her I'd never stop loving her. Promised her I'd live the rest of my life trying to be worthy of being her mother. Now, driving through the darkness toward Portland, I realized we might have stolen another family's closure. Some other mother out there might have spent 31 years doing exactly what I'd done. Waiting. Hoping. Praying for news that would never come because we'd buried her daughter under the wrong name. The guilt of that possibility was crushing. I pulled over again at a rest stop outside Salem. Stumbled to the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left. Splashed cold water on my face. Stared at myself in the harsh fluorescent lighting. I looked old. 60 years old, and every single one of them written on my face. Lines around my eyes, around my mouth. Gray hair I'd stopped bothering to color years ago. The face of a woman who'd spent 3 decades learning how to survive grief. What would Amanda see when she looked at me? If it was really her. If this wasn't another cruel trick. Would she even recognize me? I got back in the car. Kept driving. The sky was starting to lighten as I reached the outskirts of Portland. That ugly gray color between night and morning, everything washed out and colorless. Mercy General Hospital loomed ahead. Massive. All concrete and glass and fluorescent lights visible even from blocks away. I found parking in a nearly empty garage. Sat in my car for 5 minutes trying to remember how to breathe. Then I forced myself to move. One foot in front of the other. Through the garage. Into the main building. The lobby was quiet. Security guard at the desk. A janitor mopping floors. A few exhausted-looking people scattered in chairs, waiting for news about their own emergencies. "Can I help you?" The woman at the information desk looked kind. Tired but kind. "I'm looking for Dr. Rachel Winters. She's expecting me. My name is Brittany Harrison." The woman made a phone call. Nodded. Hung up. "She'll be right down." I stood there, my legs shaking, my hands clenched into fists to stop them from trembling. 5 minutes that felt like hours. Then a door opened and a woman walked toward me. Early 40s, wire-rimmed glasses, dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Professional clothes, slacks and a blouse under a white coat. The kind of face that had seen too much human suffering to be easily shocked. "Mrs. Harrison?" She extended her hand. "I'm Dr. Rachel Winters. Thank you for coming so quickly." Her handshake was firm. Steady. Everything I wasn't. "I understand this must be overwhelming," she said gently. "Would you like some coffee before we talk? There's a consultation room just down the hall where we can sit." "No." My voice came out harsher than I'd intended. "I'm sorry, I can't. I need you to tell me what you know. Please." She nodded. "Of course. Follow me." We walked through corridors that smelled like antiseptic and floor polish. Everything was too bright, too clean, too sterile. We entered a small consultation room with a table for chairs, and a window that looked out over the parking lot. Dr. Winters gestured for me to sit. I did, gripping the edge of the table to keep my hands from shaking. "The woman we're treating has been living under the name Amanda Clark for approximately 31 years, Dr. Winters began. Her voice was calm, measured. Clinical. She's been in Portland the entire time. Working various jobs. Waitressing, retail, house cleaning. She's experienced homelessness intermittently. Multiple stays at shelters. She has no memory of a life before the name Amanda Clark. Until 4 days ago." "What happened 4 days ago?" I whispered. "She was walking through Pioneer Square. There was a street artist doing portraits from photographs. He sometimes works with a nonprofit that highlights cold cases. Missing persons from the 80s and 90s. One of the photographs he was working from was your daughter's image. Part of a Still Missing Awareness campaign." Dr. Winters paused. Pulled out a tablet. Opened a photo and turned it toward me. "When the woman we're treating saw this photograph, she had what we call a complete dissociative break. She collapsed right there in the square. Paramedics brought her here. She's been in our care for 72 hours. I stared at the photo on the tablet. Not the old missing person poster. A new photo. Recent. Taken here in the hospital. The woman was 49 years old. Her hair was cut short, dyed an unnatural dark brown that didn't suit her complexion. Her face was lined. Weathered. Marked by decades of hardship I couldn't begin to imagine. She was too thin. Cheekbones sharp. Eyes carrying shadows that spoke of things no one should have to survive. But the bone structure. The shape of her face. The way she held her mouth, even in this clinical hospital photo. "Oh God," I whispered. I saw Amanda looking back at me through 31 years of survival. "She's been having recovered memories," Dr. Winters continued, her voice pulling me back from the photograph. "Fragments at first. A house with a green front door. A mother who made Dutch apple pie every Sunday. A father who taught high school chemistry and did terrible impressions of movie characters to make her laugh. A little brother who collected baseball cards." My hand flew to my mouth. The green door. Our house in Eugene had a green front door. We'd painted it that color in 1991 because Amanda had insisted green was a lucky color. The Dutch apple pie. Every Sunday without fail for 18 years. Caleb's impressions. His awful Sean Connery, his worst Clint Eastwood, the way Amanda would laugh so hard she'd cry. Jordan's baseball cards. He'd kept them in a shoebox under his bed, organized by year and team, protective sleeves for his favorites. "There's more," Dr. Winters said gently. "She remembers a dog named Copernicus. A scar on her left ankle from falling off a skateboard when she was 12. A favorite teacher named Mr. Patterson who encouraged her to apply to Berkeley. She remembers the last argument she had with you, about whether she should defer college for a year to do environmental activism work. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Every detail was correct. Every single one. I need to see her, I whispered. Please. Dr. Winters stood. Follow me. But Mrs. Harrison, she paused at the door. I need to prepare you. The woman you're about to see has lived through significant trauma. She's not the girl you lost. She may never fully be that girl again. The integration process between who she was and who she's been forced to become will take years. Possibly her entire lifetime. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We walked through corridors that felt endless. Past rooms with closed doors hiding other people's private battles. Past nurses' stations with charts and monitors and the quiet beeping of machines. Past waiting areas with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. Dr. Winters talked as we walked, but I barely heard her. Something about dissociative identity, about trauma responses, about the brain's remarkable ability to protect itself by erasing memories too painful to carry. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might collapse right there on the linoleum floor. We stopped outside a room marked 4C. Dr. Winters put her hand on my arm. Looked me straight in the eye. She's terrified, she said quietly. Terrified you'll reject her. Terrified you'll blame her for disappearing. Terrified you won't want her back after all these years. She's convinced she's not worthy of being your daughter anymore. I wanted to say that was insane. That nothing in this world or any other could make me not want my daughter back. But my throat had closed completely. No sound would come out. Dr. Winters studied my face for a moment, then nodded. She opened the door. The room was small. Standard hospital setup. A bed with rails, a chair by the window, bland beige walls, fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly sickly. A window overlooking the parking lot where early morning light was just starting to break through the gray. A woman sat in the chair by the window. She stood when I entered. Slowly, like her legs might not hold her. She was 49 years old, not 18. I had to keep reminding myself of that. 49. She'd lived an entire adult lifetime without me. Her hair was cut short, choppy, like she'd done it herself with kitchen scissors. Dyed an unnatural dark brown that didn't suit her complexion, growing out at the roots to show gray underneath. Her face was lined. Not just with age. I had lines too, laugh lines and crow's feet and the marks of 6 decades of living. Her lines were different. Deeper. Harsher. The kind that come from years of hardship and survival and things I couldn't begin to understand. She was too thin. Not the thin of someone who'd missed a few meals. The thin of someone who'd gone without for years. Her cheekbones were sharp, her collarbones prominent even under the oversized hospital clothes. Donated clothes, I realized. Sweatpants and a t-shirt that hung off her frame like they were made for someone else's body. She stood with her shoulders hunched, her arms wrapped around herself. Like she was trying to make herself smaller. Less noticeable. Less real. But her eyes. God, her eyes. Gray-blue with flecks of green. The exact color of the sky right before a storm. I used to stare at those eyes when I nursed her as a baby, amazed that I'd created something so beautiful. Direct and defiant even when she was terrified. Exactly like she'd been as a child. She looked at me. I looked at her. 31 years collapsed into nothing. Time folded in on itself. I was standing in a hospital room and also standing in her bedroom doorway watching her sleep when she was 5. I was standing at her grave saying goodbye. I was standing at our front door the night she didn't come home, waiting, praying, bargaining with a God I wasn't sure I believed in. Mom. Her voice was barely a whisper. Hoarse. Hidden. Broken. That single word demolished me. I'd imagined this moment 10,000 times in the first years after she disappeared. In my imagination I'd always been strong. Composed. The mother she needed me to be. I'd hold her and tell her everything would be okay. I'd be the rock she could lean on. Instead I stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down my face, my entire body shaking so hard I thought my bones might break. She took a hesitant step forward. Her legs wobbled slightly like she might collapse. She stopped. Swallowed hard. Tried again. I don't remember everything yet. The memories are coming back in pieces. It's like someone took my life and shattered it and I'm trying to put the pieces back together but some of them are missing and some of them don't fit and I don't know. She was talking too fast, words tumbling over each other, desperate and panicked. But I remember you, she said. I remember the secret wings. I remember you tracing the birthmark with your finger and telling me I could fly anywhere. I remember you singing Blackbird to help me fall asleep because I was afraid of the dark. I remember the way you always burned the popcorn on movie nights and Dad would tease you about it. I remember. Her voice cracked. Broke completely. I remember the last thing I said to you was that I hated you. And I didn't. I didn't hate you, Mom. I was 18 and stupid and I was so mad about the college argument and I said terrible things but I didn't mean them. I didn't hate you. The tears were streaming down her face now, her whole body shaking. I crossed the room in 3 steps. Pulled her into my arms before she could say anything else. She was stiff at first. Like she'd forgotten how to be held. Like she'd forgotten what it felt like to be safe. Then she collapsed against me and the sound that came out of her was something I'd never heard before. Not quite crying. Something deeper. More primal. The sound of someone who'd been holding themselves together for 3 decades finally allowing themselves to break. I held her while she sobbed. Felt her body shake against mine. Felt 31 years of survival and terror and things I'd never fully understand pouring out of her. He smelled wrong. Institutional soap. Medication. Decades I hadn't been there to witness. Not the strawberry shampoo she'd used in high school. Not the perfume she'd stolen from my dresser when she thought I wasn't looking. But the shape of her. The way she fit against me. The way her head still reached exactly to my shoulder even though she was too thin and I'd shrunk with age. That was right. That was muscle memory older than thought. Older than language. Mother and daughter. A bond that 31 years hadn't managed to sever. You're alive, I whispered into her hair. Baby, you're alive. That's all that matters. You're alive and you're here and I've got you. I've got you. I don't know how long we stood there. Long enough that my legs started to ache. Long enough that Dr. Winters quietly left the room, giving us privacy. Eventually Amanda's sobs quieted. Turned into hiccuping breaths. Then just shaky breathing. She pulled back slightly. Looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have told you where I was really going that night. I should have. No. I cupped her face in my hands. No. You were 18 years old. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you hear me? None of this is your fault. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I did terrible things to survive. Things I can't take back. Things that make me not sure I deserve. Stop. My voice was fierce. Firmer than I'd intended. There is nothing you could have done that would make me stop loving you. Nothing. You survived. That's what matters. You survived and you're here and we're going to figure everything else out together. She stared at me like she didn't quite believe it. Like she was waiting for me to change my mind. To reject her. Come sit, I said gently. Please. I'm 60 years old and my legs are about to give out. A ghost of a smile flickered across her face. So brief I almost missed it. We sat. Her in the hospital chair. Me on the edge of the bed. Close enough that our knees were almost touching. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. Our fingers laced together and I held on tight. Tight enough that our knuckles went white. Tight enough that it almost hurt. Neither of us let go. Tell me, I said softly. Tell me what you remember. Whatever you can. Take your time. Amanda took a shaky breath. Stared down at our joined hands. And slowly, haltingly, with long pauses where she had to collect herself, she began to tell me what she remembered. Not everything. The memories were still fragmented, still coming back in jagged pieces that didn't always connect properly. But enough. Enough to understand that my daughter hadn't died on November 8, 1993. She'd been taken. She'd been erased. She'd been turned into someone else entirely. And somehow, impossibly, against odds I couldn't begin to calculate, she'd survived. Amanda's voice was hollow as she began to speak. Like she was reading words written by someone else. November 8, 1993, she said. I remember that date now. I'd forgotten it for so long but it's back. Every detail. I squeezed her hand. Waited. I'd been talking to someone online. On a bulletin board. We didn't have social media back then, not like now. Just these message boards where people posted about different topics. I was on one about environmental activism. She paused. Took a shaky breath. His name was Marcus. At least that's what he called himself. He said he was organizing protests against illegal logging operations in the Cascades. He talked about direct action, about making a real difference, about how young people like me were the only ones brave enough to actually do something instead of just talking about it. Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. He said there was a group meeting at a coffee shop downtown. Independent coffee house near the library. Said I should come meet everyone, see if it was something I wanted to be part of. I told you I was going to study at the library. I lied. I know, I whispered. The detective told us later. It's okay. It's not okay. Her voice was fierce suddenly. I agree. None of this is okay. I lied to you, and because of that. Stop. I gripped her hand tighter. You were 18. You didn't do anything wrong. She shook her head but didn't argue. Just kept talking. When I got to the coffee shop, it wasn't just Marcus. There were 3 people. A woman, maybe mid-30s with short blonde hair. And 2 men. One was older, 40s maybe. The other was younger, closer to my age. Her hands started shaking. I held them steady. They were so nice. So friendly. They bought me coffee. They talked about all these amazing actions they'd done. Tree-sitting, road blockades, protests at corporate headquarters. They made it sound exciting. Important. Like I could actually make a difference. Amanda's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They said there was an action happening that night. Not a protest, something more direct. They were vague about the details, but they made it sound urgent. Important. They said they could use another person, especially someone young who looked innocent. I'd be perfect for it, they said. She pulled her hand away from mine. Wrapped her arms around herself. They offered me a ride. Said the location was about an hour outside the city. I should have said no. I should have asked more questions. I should have called you and told you where I was going. But I was 18 and stupid and so sure I was invincible. Her voice broke completely. I got in their van. The silence that followed was crushing. The next thing I remember clearly is waking up in a basement. Concrete floor. No windows. A mattress on the ground. And 2 other girls. Both around my age. Both terrified. I felt bile rise in my throat. Forced it down. I don't remember everything after that. It's like my brain just shut down. Fragmented. Dr. Winters says it's a trauma response. Dissociation. My mind protecting itself from things too horrible to process. Amanda's eyes were unfocused, staring at something I couldn't see. We were moved. I don't know how many times. Different houses. Different rooms. Sometimes there were other girls. Sometimes it was just me. Time stopped meaning anything. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks into months. Maybe years. I couldn't tell anymore. Her voice was mechanical now. Clinical. Like she was describing something that had happened to someone else. They gave me new identification. Social security card. Birth certificate. Driver's license. All with the name Amanda Clark. They said I was Amanda Clark now. They said my family had stopped looking for me. That they'd held a funeral. That I was dead to everyone who'd ever loved me. I felt tears streaming down my face but didn't wipe them away. They said if I ever tried to remember who I'd been before, if I ever tried to contact my family, they'd kill you. They'd kill Dad. They'd kill Jordan. They'd make sure everyone I'd ever loved suffered because of me. Her voice cracked. So I stopped trying to remember. I just let it go. Let her go. The girl I'd been. Because keeping her alive meant putting you in danger, and I couldn't do that. So I became Amanda Clark instead. She looked at me finally. Her eyes were swimming with tears. For 31 years I was nobody. A ghost. I worked whatever jobs I could get. Waitressing. Cleaning houses. I was homeless for a while. Stayed in shelters. Slept on couches belonging to people I barely knew. I survived, but I wasn't living. I was just existing. Oh baby, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry we couldn't find you. It's not your fault. Her voice was fierce. None of this is your fault. You didn't do this to me. They did. She took another shaky breath. About 5 years ago things started changing. I'd have these dreams. About a house with a green front door. About baking pie with a woman whose face I couldn't quite see. About a man doing terrible movie impressions that made me laugh. About a little boy with baseball cards. She wiped tears from her face with the back of her hand. I thought I was going crazy. Amanda Clark didn't have those memories. Amanda Clark didn't have a family. Amanda Clark appeared fully formed at 18 years old with no past. But the dreams kept coming. And slowly they started feeling less like dreams and more like memories. Amanda stood up suddenly, walked to the window, stared out at the parking lot below. 4 days ago I was walking through Pioneer Square. There was a street artist there. He does portraits from photographs sometimes. Works with some non-profit that highlights cold cases. She turned to face me. One of the photographs was me. My 18-year-old face. Part of some still missing awareness campaign. When I saw it, her whole body started shaking. It was like someone flipped a switch in my brain. Everything came flooding back at once. My real name. Your face. Dad's voice. Jordan as a kid. Copernicus sleeping at the foot of my bed. The fight we had about deferring college. The way you always burned the popcorn. The secret wings. She wrapped her arms around herself, like she was trying to hold herself together. I collapsed right there. Screaming. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. 31 years of memories hitting me all at once. People called an ambulance. They brought me here. Dr. Winters has been helping me piece it together, but it's like trying to reassemble a person who's been shattered into a million pieces. I stood up, crossed to where she stood, put my arms around her from behind and held her while she cried. You remember Copernicus? I asked softly after a while. She nodded against me. He was the best dog. He'd always steal food off the counter when he thought no one was looking. A shocked laugh escaped me. I'd forgotten that. He stole an entire chicken once, Amanda said, and there was the ghost of a smile in her voice. Right off the table at Thanksgiving. Dad chased him around the yard for 20 minutes. We had to order pizza, I remembered. Jordan thought it was the best Thanksgiving ever. Amanda turned in my arms. Looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Jordan, she whispered. My little brother. Is he? He's alive. He's in Boston. He's married. Has 2 kids. I touched her face gently. You're an aunt. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I missed his whole life. I know. But he's going to want to see you. When you're ready. She nodded. Then something seemed to occur to her. Mom, she said slowly. If I'm alive, if I've been alive this whole time, then who did you bury? The question I'd been dreading. We don't know yet, I said quietly. The remains will need to be re-examined. Dr. Winters said they'll do DNA testing. Try to identify whoever. I couldn't finish. Amanda's face crumpled. Some other family has been waiting for answers while I was alive. Some other mother has been. Stop, I said firmly. That is not your fault. None of this is your fault. She looked at me with those eyes that had seen too much, survived too much. I hummed Blackbird in the shower this morning, she said suddenly. I didn't even realize I was doing it until Dr. Winters mentioned it. You used to sing that to me every night. You were afraid of the dark, I remembered. It was the only thing that helped you sleep. I still am, she whispered. Afraid of the dark. Afraid of basements. Afraid of white vans. Afraid of so many things. I pulled her close again. Held her tight. We're going to get through this, I promised. Together. However long it takes. She didn't answer. Just held on to me like I was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. Maybe I was. Dr. Winters knocked softly on the door about 20 minutes later. Amanda and I were still holding each other, neither of us quite ready to let go. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Winters said gently. But Mrs. Harrison, there are some practical matters we need to discuss. And Amanda needs to rest. She's been awake for over 30 hours. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale with exhaustion. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. I'll be right outside, I promised her. I'm not going anywhere. Amanda's grip on my hand tightened. You promise? I promise. She let go slowly like she was afraid I'd disappear if she blinked. I followed Dr. Winters into the hallway, my legs unsteady. The fluorescent lights felt too bright after the dim hospital room. Everything felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream. I need to call my husband, I said. And my son. They need to know. Of course. There's a consultation room down the hall where you'll have privacy. Take all the time you need. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I had 17 missed calls from Caleb. 3 voicemails. A dozen text messages asking if I was okay, asking what was happening, asking if he should come. I called him. He answered before the first ring finished. Brittany. His voice was raw. Desperate. Please tell me. It's her. The words came out broken. Caleb, it's really her. It's Amanda. The sound he made wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a gasp. Something in between. Are you sure? Are you absolutely? I'm sure. Tears were streaming down my face again. She knew things, Caleb. Things nobody else could know. The secret wings. Copernicus. The argument about college. She remembered the Thanksgiving he stole the chicken off the table. I heard him break down completely on the other end. Heard him trying to speak and failing. Heard 31 years of grief pouring out of him. Is she okay? He finally managed. Is she hurt? She's alive. She's been through, my voice cracked. She's been through things I can't even begin to understand. But she's alive, Caleb. Our daughter is alive. I'm coming. I'm leaving right now. I'll be there in 3 hours. Drive carefully. Please. I need you to get here safely. I love you, Britt. I love you too. I hung up. Stared at my phone. I needed to call Jordan. It was 7:15 a.m. on the East Coast. He'd be getting Emma and Michael ready for school. Following the same morning routine he'd built, 3,000 miles away from the family that had fallen apart when his sister disappeared. I called him. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Mom. His voice was immediately concerned. What's wrong? It's like 4 in the morning there. I'm in Portland. At a hospital. I took a shaky breath. Jordan, your sister is alive. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. What are you talking about? His voice was carefully controlled. Too controlled. Amanda's dead. We buried her in 1995. We buried someone else. We didn't know. The medical examiner made a mistake. But she's here, Jordan. She's been living in Portland this whole time with no memory of who she was. Until 4 days ago. Mom. His voice was tight now. Strained. Is this another? We've been through this before. The psychic. The con artist. That woman with dementia. I can't. It's real. I cut him off. She knows things. Private things. Family things. Things no stranger could know. I heard him say something muffled to Claire. Heard her voice responding. Heard him walking, a door closing. Are you sure? He asked quietly. Are you absolutely sure this time? I'm looking at her face right now in my mind and I see your sister. I see the girl who used to read you bedtime stories and threatened to beat up anyone who messed with you. I see her, Jordan. His breath hitched. Does she remember me? She remembered your baseball card collection. She remembered protecting you. She asked about you the second she could form words. I heard him crying. My son who'd built walls so thick around his grief that I'd almost forgotten he knew how to cry. I'll get on the first flight out, he said. I'll be there tonight. Tell her. His voice broke. Tell her I'm coming. Tell her I never stopped missing her. I will. After I hung up, I sat in that consultation room for a long time, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 5 hours. At 2:03 a.m. I'd been asleep in my bed. Now it was barely 8 in the morning and my entire world had been turned inside out. Dr. Winters found me there 20 minutes later. Mrs. Harrison, do you feel up to discussing next steps? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I felt up to anything. We sat across from each other at a small table. Dr. Winters had a file folder in front of her. Official looking. The kind that holds documents that change lives. First, we'll need to do DNA testing, she began. To officially confirm Amanda's identity. It's a formality at this point. I don't doubt who she is, but it's necessary for legal purposes. We can do that today. How long for results? With expedited processing, about a week. Maybe less. A week. 7 more days of existing in this strange limbo between impossibility and confirmation. There will also need to be interviews with law enforcement, Dr. Winters continued. The FBI has a task force that deals with trafficking cases. They'll want detailed testimony from Amanda about what she remembers. Names, locations, descriptions of the people involved. Any information that might help them find other victims or prosecute perpetrators. The thought of Amanda having to relive her trauma for strangers made me feel sick. Will she have to? I asked. Testify, I mean. That will be her choice. No one can force her. But the information she has could potentially save other lives. Help find other missing girls. Bring people to justice who've been operating for decades. I nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what Amanda would have to carry. She'll need intensive therapy, Dr. Winters went on. What Amanda is experiencing is called complex PTSD. She's lived through sustained, repeated trauma that fundamentally reshaped her identity. For 31 years she's been someone else entirely. The process of integrating those two identities, Amanda Clark and your daughter, will take years. Possibly her entire lifetime. What does that mean? I asked. Integration. It means learning to hold both truths simultaneously. That she is Amanda Clark with all the experiences and survival skills that identity required. And that she is also your daughter with all the memories and connections that identity holds. It means processing decades of trauma while also processing the grief of everything she lost. It won't be linear. She'll have good days and terrible days. Breakthroughs and setbacks. Dr. Winters leaned forward slightly, her expression serious. Mrs. Harrison, I need you to understand. The woman in that room is not the 18-year-old girl you lost. She's a 49-year-old woman who's survived things most people can't imagine. She's been shaped by experiences you weren't there to witness or protect her from. Expecting her to simply become who she was before isn't realistic or fair. I know, I said quietly. I don't expect that. I just want her to have a chance to heal. To build whatever life she can from here. Dr. Winters nodded. There's one more thing we need to discuss. The remains you buried in 1995. My stomach dropped. If Amanda is your daughter, then someone else's child is in that grave. The remains will need to be exhumed and re-examined. We'll do DNA testing, try to identify who they actually belong to. For 31 years I'd visited that grave. Brought flowers on Amanda's birthday. Sat on the grass and talked to her about Jordan's life, about Caleb's retirement, about the grandbabies she'd never meet. Now I had to face the reality that it had never been Amanda lying there. It had been someone else's daughter. Someone else's sister. Someone else's friend. There's another family out there, I said slowly. Another mother who's been waiting. Possibly. The remains might match someone in the missing persons database. Or they might not. We may never know who she was. The guilt was crushing. Some family had spent 3 decades in the same hell we'd lived through, except they'd never gotten closure. Never gotten answers. Because we'd taken their daughter and buried her under the wrong name. I want to know, I said firmly. As soon as you identify the remains, I want to know. If there's a family still searching, I need to tell them. They deserve that. Dr. Winters studied my face for a moment. That's very compassionate of you. Most people in your position would just want to move forward, not look back. How can I move forward knowing another mother is still waiting? I asked. Knowing she might be visiting an empty grave the way I thought I was doing for 31 years? Dr. Winters nodded slowly. I'll make sure you're notified as soon as we have information. I stood up. My legs were unsteady, my whole body exhausted. Can I go back to her now? Of course. But Mrs. Harrison, Amanda needs to rest. She's been awake for over 30 hours and her body and mind are both exhausted. She'll sleep most of the day, which is exactly what she needs. I walked back to room 4C. Pushed the door open quietly. Amanda was lying in the hospital bed now, her eyes already closing. A nurse was adjusting her checking her vital signs. I sat down in the chair by the window. The same chair she'd been sitting in when I first walked in. Mom. Amanda's voice was drowsy. You're still here. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise, baby. I'll be right here when you wake up. Her eyes closed. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. I sat there watching her. My daughter. Alive. Here. And I wondered how we were going to survive rebuilding a life that had been destroyed 31 years ago. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. We would survive it. We'd already survived the worst. Everything else was just details. Caleb arrived at the hospital just before noon. I was sitting in the chair by Amanda's bed watching her sleep when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. Fast. Urgent. Like he'd been running. I stepped out to meet him before he could burst into the room and wake her. He looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. He'd aged a decade in the 6 hours since my phone call. Brit. He grabbed my arms. Is it real? Please tell me it's real. It's real. I pulled him into a hug, felt him shaking against me. She's in there. She's asleep, but she's real. She's alive. The sound that came out of him was something between a sob and a gasp. He held on to me like I was the only thing keeping him upright. I need to see her, he whispered. I know. But Caleb, listen to me first. I pulled back, looked him in the eye. She's not 18 anymore. She's 49. She's lived through things we can't imagine. She looks different. Sounds different. She's not the girl we lost. He nodded, but I wasn't sure he'd really heard me. I opened the door to room 4C quietly. Amanda was still sleeping, curled on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek like she used to do as a child. Caleb stood in the doorway, frozen. I watched him take her in. The short, badly dyed hair. The lines on her face. The way she looked too thin even under the hospital blankets. The way 31 years had marked her in ways they hadn't marked us. Amanda. His voice cracked on her name. She stirred. Opened her eyes. Saw him standing there. For a moment neither of them moved. Then recognition flickered across her face. Dad. That single word broke him. Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Amanda made a sound, half sob, half gasp, and clung to him like she was drowning and he was the only thing keeping her afloat. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Stop, Caleb said fiercely. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. I stood in the doorway watching my husband hold our daughter for the first time in 31 years, and for the first time since that 2 a.m. phone call, I let myself believe this might actually be real. That first day set the pattern for the next 12. Every morning, Caleb and I would make the drive from Eugene to Portland. 3.5 hours there, 3.5 hours back. We'd spend the middle of the day with Amanda, then drive home exhausted, only to wake up and do it again the next morning. Some days were good. On day 2, Amanda remembered our old cat, Winston. Remembered how he'd knock things off counters just to watch them fall. She laughed when she remembered it. A real laugh, not the hollow broken sound she'd been making. The sound made me cry. On day 4, she remembered family trips to Cannon Beach. Building sandcastles with Jordan. The time a wave knocked her over and she came up sputtering and laughing. Caleb teaching her to skip stones. Me warning her not to go too far into the water. You were always so worried, Amanda said. About everything. You'd pack 3 extra jackets just in case. I was trying to keep you safe, I said. Her smile faded. You couldn't keep me safe from everything. On day 5, she remembered Christmas mornings. How Jordan would wake everyone up at 5 a.m. too excited to wait. How we'd make hot chocolate and open presents in our pajamas. How Caleb would always pretend he hadn't gotten me anything, then pull out something he'd been hiding for weeks. Each memory was a small victory. Another piece of herself she was reclaiming from the decades of erasure. But other days were terrible. On day 6, Amanda had a panic attack so severe they had to sedate her. She'd been fine one moment talking about her favorite teacher in high school, and then suddenly she was hyperventilating, screaming that she couldn't breathe, that the room was closing in on her. We tried to help, but the nurses had ushered us out while they dealt with it. Caleb and I sat in the hallway listening to our daughter scream, and there was nothing we could do. On day 8 she had a dissociative episode. We'd been talking about Thanksgiving traditions when suddenly Amanda's eyes went blank. Completely empty. Like no one was home. Amanda. I'd said. Baby, can you hear me? Nothing. She stared straight through me like I wasn't there. Dr. Winters had explained later that it was a trauma response. When the memories became too overwhelming, Amanda's brain would essentially shut down. Disconnect from reality. It was a survival mechanism, but it was terrifying to witness. On day 9, Amanda refused to see us at all. When we arrived, the nurse said she'd had a bad night and didn't want visitors. We'd sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, hoping she'd change her mind. She never did. I'd cried the entire drive home. But we kept coming back. Every single day. Slowly, gradually, Amanda became more present. More herself. Whoever that self was now. Jordan arrived on day 3. I met him in the lobby. He looked exhausted. He'd taken a red-eye from Boston, hadn't slept. His wife Claire had stayed home with the kids, but she'd sent messages. Tell her we love her. Tell her we can't wait to meet her. Is she? Jordan started, then stopped. What should I expect? I don't know, I said honestly. She's different every day. Sometimes she's okay. Sometimes she's not. Just be patient with her. And with yourself. We walked to room 4C together. I knocked softly before entering. Amanda was sitting up in bed, picking at her breakfast tray without actually eating anything. She looked up when we entered, and I saw her freeze when she saw Jordan. Hey, Jordan said. His voice was carefully neutral. Controlled. Hi. Amanda's voice was small. Jordan. They stared at each other across the room. Jordan was 34 now. A grown man with a wife and kids and a successful career. The last time Amanda had seen him, he'd been 15. A kid in braces who collected baseball cards and hero-worshipped his big sister. You got tall, Amanda said finally. A surprised laugh escaped Jordan. Yeah. You missed that. I missed a lot of things. The silence stretched. Uncomfortable. Heavy with everything that couldn't be said. I was 15 when you disappeared, Jordan said finally. 15. I needed my sister and you were gone. And then I needed my parents and they were gone too. Lost in searching for you. I raced myself, Amanda. I got myself through high school. Applied to colleges on my own. Learned to be an adult with no help from anyone. His voice was tight. Controlled. But I could hear the anger underneath. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I know it's not your fault, Jordan continued. I know you didn't choose this. But I'm angry anyway. I'm so angry. And I don't know what to do with it. You can be angry, Amanda whispered. You have every right to be angry. I don't want to be angry. Jordan's voice cracked. I want my sister back. But I don't know if that's possible. Because the sister I remember was 18 years old. And you're 49, Amanda finished. I'm 49 and I've lived an entire life you know nothing about, and you've lived an entire life I wasn't there for. And I don't know how to fix that. Maybe we can't fix it, Jordan said. Maybe we just have to start over. They didn't hug that day. Didn't touch at all. But Jordan pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. And they talked for 3 hours. About Jordan's life, his wife, his kids. About his job as a software engineer. About the life he'd built 3,000 miles away from the family that had fallen apart. Amanda listened to all of it, tears streaming down her face, mourning everything she'd missed. When Jordan left, he squeezed her hand. Brief, tentative, but real. I'll come back tomorrow, he said. Okay, Amanda whispered. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a start. On day 12, Dr. Winters called us into her office. Amanda sat between Caleb and me, our hands clasped together so tightly our fingers had gone numb. Jordan sat on Amanda's other side, his jaw tight with tension. Dr. Winters looked at us across her desk. Her expression was unreadable. For one terrible moment, I thought she was going to tell us it wasn't a match. That Amanda was delusional. That we'd let ourselves hope for nothing. Then she smiled. It's definitive, she said. The DNA test confirms that Amanda is your biological daughter. The relief was so overwhelming I thought I might pass out. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair to keep from falling. Caleb made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. Amanda started sobbing. Jordan put his head in his hands. We held each other in that small office, crying, laughing, unable to form coherent words. For the first time in 31 years, I let myself believe in miracles. Then Dr. Winters cleared her throat gently. There's something else, she said. The remains from 1995 have been identified through DNA. Her name was Sarah Whitmore. She went missing from Seattle in 1994. She was 19 years old. Her family has been notified. The joy drained out of me like water through a sieve. Sarah Whitmore. Someone else's daughter. Someone else's sister. For 31 years I'd visited that grave. Mourned at that headstone. Talked to someone who was never Amanda. And somewhere Sarah Whitmore's mother had been waiting. Hoping. Never knowing her daughter was dead because we'd buried her under the wrong name. I need their contact information, I said. My voice sounded distant. Hollow. Dr. Winters hesitated. Mrs. Harrison, perhaps you should take some time. No, I said firmly. I need to speak with them. They deserve to know what happened. They deserve an apology. Brittany, you don't have to, Caleb started. Yes, I do. I looked at him. How would you feel if our situations were reversed? If Sarah's family had buried Amanda by mistake and we'd spent 31 years waiting for answers that never came? He didn't have a response to that. Dr. Winters wrote down a phone number on a piece of paper. Slid it across the desk to me. Her mother's name is Margaret Whitmore, she said quietly. Please be gentle with yourself, Mrs. Harrison. This situation isn't your fault. But as I stared at that phone number, all I could think was, another mother had lost 31 years because of a mistake. And I needed to look her in the eye and tell her I was sorry. I called Margaret Whitmore 3 days after getting her number. I'd been carrying that piece of paper in my pocket, the numbers written in Dr. Winters' careful handwriting, unable to bring myself to dial. Finally, on a Thursday afternoon, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and made the call. She answered on the second ring. Hello. Her voice was tired, worn down by decades of waiting. Mrs. Whitmore? My name is Brittany Harrison. Dr. Winters gave me your number. My voice broke. I'm the woman who buried your daughter by mistake. The silence on the other end was so long I thought she'd hung up. I know who you are, she said finally. Her voice was steady. Too steady. The FBI told me what happened. I'm so sorry, I said. I know that's not enough. I know nothing I say will ever be enough. But I need you to know we thought it was our daughter. We weren't trying to. I don't blame you. Her words surprised me. You did what any parent would do with the information you had. The medical examiner made the determination. You were just trying to find closure. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face. You spent 31 years not knowing. 31 years waiting. Because we took your daughter and buried her under the wrong name. And now I know, Margaret said quietly. Now I can bring Sarah home. Give her a proper burial with her real name. At least now I don't have to wonder anymore if she ran away because she was mad at me. If she's out there somewhere choosing not to come home. Her voice cracked on the last words. For 31 years I thought she left because of me, Margaret continued. Because we'd fought about her boyfriend. Because I'd said terrible things. I thought she was alive somewhere, hating me. At least now I know she didn't choose to leave. We cried together on that call. Two mothers connected by tragedy and mistaken identity and the terrible luck of having daughters who disappeared in the same era. How is she? Margaret asked after a while. Your daughter. Amanda. She's alive, I said. She's healing. It's going to take a long time, but she's here. At least one of us got our daughter back, Margaret said. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just exhaustion. At least one of us did. We talked for another 20 minutes. I promised to keep her updated on the exhumation process, on the transfer of Sarah's remains. She promised to let me know about the funeral. Will you come? She asked. To Sarah's burial. I know it's a lot to ask, but I'll be there, I said. I owe her that much. 6 weeks after that 2 a.m. phone call, Amanda was released from Mercy General. Caleb and I had assumed she'd come home with us to Eugene. We'd prepared her old room, bought new sheets, hung curtains in the color she used to like. We wanted to take care of her, wanted to keep her close after 3 decades of absence. But Dr. Winters and Amanda's trauma therapist both said that would be a mistake. She needs to build her own life, Dr. Winters explained gently. Not try to slip back into the one she had at 18. That girl doesn't exist anymore. Amanda needs to figure out who she is now, and she can't do that living in the house where she grew up, surrounded by memories of who she used to be. So we helped her find an apartment instead. It was small, a 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor of an older building in Northeast Portland. The rent was reasonable, the neighborhood was safe, and it was close to her therapy team and the trauma center where she'd be continuing treatment. The apartment was empty when we first saw it. Worn hardwood floors, white walls that needed fresh paint, a kitchen barely big enough for a small table. But it had good light. Big windows that looked out over a tree-lined street. I like it, Amanda said quietly. It feels safe. We spent the next week furnishing it. Caleb and I bought her everything. Dishes, towels, a comfortable bed, a couch that actually looked decent. I hung curtains while Caleb assembled furniture, making the same terrible jokes he'd been making for 40 years. Why did the furniture maker go to therapy? he asked while struggling with an IKEA bookshelf. Amanda looked up from unpacking kitchen supplies. Why? Because he had too many shelf issues. A small smile flickered across her face. Brief, uncertain but real. That's terrible, Dad, she said. Your mother's been telling me that for decades, Caleb replied. Hasn't stopped me yet. Amanda laughed. A real laugh, not the hollow, broken sound she'd been making. The sound made me cry. But even in those good moments I could see how different she was. The Amanda I remembered had been loud. Opinionated. Full of fire and conviction. She'd argued politics at the dinner table, debated environmental policy with anyone who'd listen, filled every room with her presence. This Amanda was quiet. She apologized constantly, for asking for help, for taking up space, for existing. I'm sorry, could you maybe, I don't mean to be difficult, but could we move the couch a little to the left? If it's not too much trouble. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize, I'd tell her. This is your apartment. You get to decide where everything goes. She'd nod, but 10 minutes later she'd be apologizing again. She had panic attacks triggered by things I couldn't predict. White vans passing on the street. The smell of a certain brand of coffee. Basements. Locked doors. Men's voices raised in anger, even if the anger had nothing to do with her. She couldn't sleep without medication. Even with it, she rarely got more than 4 hours a night. She couldn't be in crowds. We tried taking her to the grocery store once and she'd lasted 10 minutes before the walls started closing in and she had to leave. But she was also stronger than I'd ever been. She'd survived 3 decades of hell and come out the other side still capable of hope. Still capable of love. Still capable of looking forward instead of only backward. I had to learn to love this version of my daughter. Not mourn the version I'd lost. That was harder than it sounded. Jordan came back to Portland 3 more times in the first 3 months. Each visit was slightly less tense than the last. On his 3rd visit he brought Claire and the kids. Emma was 7, all energy and questions. Michael was 5, shy and serious. They had no idea their aunt had supposedly been dead their entire lives. Jordan and Claire had told them Aunt Amanda lived far away and they hadn't been able to visit before. Simple. Age appropriate. Amanda cried when she met them. Emma was cautious at first, hiding behind her father's legs. But Amanda sat on the floor, made herself smaller, less threatening, and asked Emma about her favorite things. I like butterflies, Emma said. And purple. And my friend Sophia. I like butterflies too, Amanda said softly. I have a birthmark shaped like a butterfly. Want to see? Emma nodded. Amanda showed her the tiny mark behind her ear, and Emma touched it gently with one finger. That's so cool, Emma breathed. Amanda looked up at Jordan with tears streaming down her face. She has my eyes. Jordan nodded. Yeah. She does. Michael warmed up more slowly, but by the end of the visit he was showing Amanda his Pokémon cards and explaining in great detail which ones were rare. After the kids went to explore Amanda's small balcony, Jordan sat down next to his sister on the couch. Claire thinks I should talk to a therapist, he said. About all of this. The anger I'm carrying. That's probably a good idea, Amanda said. I'm trying, Jordan said. To not be angry at you. I know it's not your fault. I know you didn't choose any of this. You can be angry, Amanda told him. You have every right. I missed your whole life. Your high school graduation. Your wedding. The birth of your kids. I wasn't there for any of it. And I missed yours, Jordan said. 31 years of your life that I know nothing about. We're strangers who happen to share DNA and some childhood memories. Maybe we can start over, Amanda suggested. Not try to pick up where we left off because that's impossible. But maybe we can build something new. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. I'd like that. They started talking on the phone weekly after that. Awkward conversations at first, full of long pauses and careful topics. But gradually they got easier. Jordan told her about his work, his kids, his life in Boston. Amanda told him about her therapy, her struggles, her small victories. They couldn't fix 3 decades of loss. But they were building something. Something that might eventually feel like family again. For months after coming home, Amanda told us she'd made a decision. We were having lunch at her apartment. Sandwiches from a deli down the street, eaten at her small kitchen table. The FBI contacted me, she said. They want me to testify. About what I remember. The people involved. the locations. Anything that might help them find other victims or prosecute the people who are still alive. My stomach dropped. Amanda, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, she interrupted. Her voice was steady, determined. But I want to. Your therapist said testifying could set back your progress, I said. That it could be re-traumatizing. She also said it could be empowering, Amanda replied. That taking my story and using it to help other people could be part of my healing. Other girls are still out there, Amanda continued. Girls like I was. Lost. Trapped in lives they didn't choose. If my testimony can help find them, help save them, then I have to do it. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. Are you sure? No, Amanda admitted. I'm terrified. But I'm doing it anyway. I have to take what happened to me and turn it into something that matters. Otherwise they win. The people who tried to erase me, they win. I tried to talk her out of it. Tried to protect her from more pain. But Caleb put his hand on mine and shook his head. This is her choice, he said quietly. She gets to decide how she heals. So 3 weeks later, I sat outside a closed FBI conference room while Amanda testified. 3 days of testimony. 8 hours each day. Reliving every detail of the worst years of her life. I waited in the hallway with Caleb. Paced. Drank terrible coffee from vending machines. Counted the tiles on the floor. When Amanda finally emerged on the 3rd day, she looked like she might collapse. I caught her before she fell, held her while she sobbed, supported her weight as we walked to the car. She didn't speak the entire drive home. Just stared out the window with hollow eyes. But 2 days later she called me. They found someone, she said. Her voice was shaky but determined. Because of what I told them. They found a woman who'd been missing for 8 years. She's going home to her family. Oh baby, I whispered. It was worth it, Amanda said. It was worth every second of reliving it if it means one more person gets to go home. And I realized that my daughter was braver than I'd ever been. She'd survived the unsurvivable. And now she was fighting to make sure no one else had to. 8 months after Amanda came home, she called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Mom, I did something and I need to tell you about it before you see it online. My stomach dropped. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm more than fine actually. I enrolled in classes. Online courses through Portland State. I want to finish my degree. I sat down on the couch processing. Your degree. The one I started 31 years ago. Environmental law. She paused. Well, not environmental law anymore. Social work. I want to help trafficking survivors. I want to become an advocate. Amanda, I didn't know how to finish. That's wonderful. But are you sure you're ready? Your therapist said. My therapist said I should focus on my own healing first, Amanda interrupted. And I am. But part of my healing is taking what happened to me and turning it into something that matters. I've been a victim for 31 years, Mom. I'm done being a victim. I want to be a survivor who helps other people survive. Her voice was steady, determined, more sure of herself than I'd heard since she'd come home. If this is what you want, I said carefully, then your father and I will support you. Thank you, she whispered. I need this. I need to feel like those 31 years weren't just wasted. Like they can mean something. She threw herself into her studies with an intensity that scared me sometimes. Late nights reading textbooks about trauma-informed care. Writing papers about systemic failures in victim services. Video calls with professors and classmates, her voice stronger each time. Caleb worried she was pushing herself too hard. I did too. But she was also thriving in a way I hadn't seen since she'd come home. 2 months after enrolling, Amanda started volunteering at a local nonprofit that worked with trafficking survivors. Just a few hours a week at first. Answering phones. Filing paperwork. Sitting in on support groups. Then they asked her to share her story at one of the groups. She called me the night before, terrified. What if I break down? What if I can't get through it? What if I make it worse for them instead of better? Then you break down, I said. And you let them see that it's okay to break down. That you can survive breaking down and still keep going. She did break down. He told me about it afterwards. She'd gotten through most of her story. The abduction, the years of erasure, the moment she saw her own face on that poster, and everything came flooding back. Then someone in the group had asked, how did you keep going all those years? and Amanda had fallen apart. But the other women in the group had surrounded her, held her, told her they understood, that they'd asked themselves the same question, that seeing her survive gave them hope they could survive too. I helped them, Amanda said, wonder in her voice. Just by being there. Just by surviving. I helped them. After that she spoke at more events. Awareness campaigns. Fundraisers. College classes studying human trafficking. Then a journalist from a national magazine contacted her. They were doing a piece on long-term trafficking survivors. Would Amanda be willing to share her story? He said yes. The essay was published in September. 31 Years Lost. One Woman's Journey from Erasure to Advocacy. It went viral within hours. Suddenly, people recognized Amanda on the street. Not as Amanda Clark, the broken homeless woman who'd spent decades invisible, but as Amanda Harrison, the survivor who'd come back from the dead. She got messages from other survivors. From families of missing persons. From people who'd never thought about trafficking before but were now paying attention. You're making a real difference, I told her. I'm trying, she said. I'm trying to make those 31 years mean something other than just pain. In October, she was asked to consult on a task force developing better protocols for helping trafficking survivors reintegrate into society. In November, she was accepted into a graduate program for social work. Full scholarship. She was building a life that mattered. A life that would have been impossible if she'd stayed the girl she'd been at 18. And I realized that was its own kind of revenge. Not destruction. Not making the people who'd hurt her suffer. But refusing to let them win. Refusing to stay buried. Building something so meaningful from the ruins that it rendered all those years of darkness powerless. On a clear Sunday morning in July, 10 months after that first phone call, Amanda invited us over for breakfast. She met us at the door and I barely recognized her. Her face had filled out. She looked healthy. Her hair had grown out past her shoulders, showing the natural auburn color I remembered from her childhood. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt that actually fit properly, not the oversized donated clothes she'd been hiding in. She looked like herself. Not the 18-year-old who'd disappeared. Not the broken woman who'd emerged from 31 years of trauma. Someone new. Someone who'd integrated all the pieces of who she'd been forced to become and was building something whole from the fragments. Come in, she said, smiling. I made breakfast. Well, I tried. Fair warning, the pie might be a disaster. Dutch apple pie. Our Sunday tradition from before. We sat at her small kitchen table, the same one Caleb had assembled months ago. The apartment looked different now. More lived in. Personal. Photos on the walls. Some old ones we'd given her, some new ones from the past few months. Books on the shelves. A plant in the window that was actually alive. The pie was slightly overdone, the crust a bit too brown on the edges. It was perfect. This tastes like home, Caleb said, his voice thick. Amanda smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. I called Grandma's sister. Aunt Linda. She still had the exact recipe written in Grandma's handwriting. She mailed it to me. You called Linda? Asked, surprised. I've been calling a lot of people, Amanda said. Trying to reconnect with family. I talked to Aunt Linda for 2 hours. She remembered me as a kid. Told me stories I'd forgotten. It was nice. To hear about myself through someone else's eyes. To know I existed before I was Amanda Clark. He took a bite of pie. I have some news. I wanted to tell you in person. Caleb and I exchanged glances. I've been accepted into a graduate program. Portland State. Social work with a focus on trauma and victim advocacy. I start in September. Amanda, that's incredible, I said. There's more. I've been asked to join a task force. They're developing new protocols for helping trafficking survivors reintegrate. The task force wants input from actual survivors, not just academics and law enforcement. They asked me to consult. Her voice was steady. Proud. I'm also writing a book, she continued. A memoir. My literary agent thinks it could really make a difference. Help people understand what long-term trafficking looks like. How survivors can rebuild. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. You're incredible. You know that. I'm trying, Amanda said. I'm trying to take what happened to me and turn it into something that helps other people. So those 31 years weren't just lost. So they can mean something. They mean you survived, I said fiercely. That's enough. You don't have to turn your trauma into productivity to make it worthwhile. I know, Amanda said. But I want to. For me. Not because I have to prove anything but because it feels good to help. To take the worst thing that ever happened to me and use it to make sure it happens to fewer people. She looked at both of us across the table. I've been thinking about the secret wings, she said suddenly. Do you remember Mom? Telling me I could fly anywhere in my dreams. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I think I'm ready to fly now, Amanda said. Not in my dreams. For real. I'm ready to build a life. A real life. Not just surviving but actually living. Caleb's eyes filled with tears. Then that's what we'll help you do. However long it takes. We're not going anywhere. I looked at my daughter across that kitchen table. This woman who'd been stolen at 18 and returned at 49. This woman who'd spent 31 years erased, turned into someone else, forced to forget she'd ever been my daughter. This woman who'd seen her own face on a poster and had her entire identity shatter and somehow, impossibly, put herself back together. We'd lost 31 years. We'd buried the wrong girl. We'd mourned someone who was still alive, still fighting, still refusing to be defeated. But we had now. We had this moment. This pie that was slightly overdone but tasted like redemption. This small apartment that Amanda had turned into a home. This woman who'd survived the unsurvivable and was choosing to live fully anyway. I went to Sarah Whitmore's funeral, I said quietly. Margaret invited me. I thought you should know. Amanda nodded. How was it? Sad. But also, there was closure. Margaret got to bury her daughter under her real name. Got to say goodbye properly. He thanked me. For calling her. For making sure Sarah got her identity back. I'm glad, Amanda said. No one should be buried under the wrong name. Everyone deserves to be remembered as themselves. She smiled slightly. I used to think about that. When I was Amanda Clark. I'd wonder if anyone would remember me when I died. If anyone would care. Or if I'd just disappear and no one would even notice. We would have noticed, I said fiercely. Even when we thought you were gone, we noticed your absence every single day. I know that now, Amanda said. I'm starting to really believe it. We sat there for a long time, eating overdone pie, talking about nothing and everything, making plans for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Jordan's next visit with the kids, building a future from the pieces of a past that had been shattered. And I realized this was Amanda's revenge. Not against any specific person. Not destruction or violence or making anyone suffer. Her revenge was this: surviving, coming home, refusing to stay buried. Building a life so full of meaning and purpose that it rendered 31 years of darkness powerless. They'd tried to erase her. They'd stolen her name, her identity, her entire life. But she'd come back. And she was flying. If this story of survival and resurrection had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Amanda saw her own face on that missing persons poster and everything came flooding back. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.